Right, good morning, everybody. We are back to Gemarah Sanhedrin, and welcome back to Julia. We missed you last week, Julia. We missed your insightful comments. Nice to have you back. Nice to have Michael Kraus back in the flesh in Shul this morning, back to the Holy Land. That's nice to see you as well. Jackie was given some homework. Well, actually, he gave himself the homework because he asked the question. Who remembers, apart from Jackie, what Jackie's homework was from last week? I bet Julia knows because she's just listened to the recording.
Yes, exactly. only just finished listening to the recording. And the homework was to do with copying. Does Michael want to say something? No. Copying the Torah and whether it was the whole of it or whether it was relevant sections.
Very good, Julia. Right, Jackie, what's the answer? What does the king have to do?
Right, we have four answers, of course. Right, I'll read you what it says in Parsha Shoftim. It says,
One sec, Jackie, before you do that, let me share the screen because I happen to have Parsha Shoftim on the screen ready for you. Right, off you go.
I will set a king over myself like all the nations that are around me. You shall surely stir yourself a king whom Hashem your God shall choose from among your brethren. Shall you set a king over yourself? You cannot place over yourself a foreign man who is not your brother. Only he shall not have, and this is in the relevant section, only he shall not have too many horses for himself, so that he will not return the people to Egypt in order to increase horses. For Hashem has said to you, you shall no longer return on this road again. And he shall not have too many wives, so that his heart shall not turn astray, and he shall not greatly increase silver and gold for himself. It shall be that when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, and here it is, he shall write for himself 2 copies of this Torah in a book from before the Kohanim, the Levites. Now, some poskim say that the 2 copies of the Torah he has to write are just this section from Shoftim. That's the only 2, and he has to write it on 2 different scrolls. Because don't forget, he has to carry 1 parchment on his arm. Well, to carry a whole Sefer Torah on his arm is a bit awkward, but if he's got just these 2 little parchments, fine. Now, another opinion is...
Well, one sec, Jackie. The second part of the homework, if you recall, was I wanted your sources. Now, which poskim say what you've just said, please?
Well, this is Shoftim. This is in the Torah.
No, but you just said to me there are some poskim who say it's only those sections.
Oh,
which poskim?
I've had so many I can't remember. Sorry.
All right. Okay,
sorry.
we'll come back to it. Carry on. It's good stuff.
Another opinion says he just has to write Sedra Devorim and carry that. Another opinion says yes, he has to write the whole 2 Sefer Torahs. Right. The Lubavitch or the Rebbe's opinion is that he has to write a Sefer Torah, but he only has to write 1 word. He has to get a scroll to write, a scribe to write the whole scroll, and the king just has to write 1 word because he hasn't got time to write the whole 2 scrolls. So take your pick.
Fabulous. Okay, right. Excellent. Now, I'm just going to put a little bit more flesh on that, if you don't mind, because I also did some research. And if you remember, I said to you, don't ask ChatGPT. And you said to me, I don't have ChatGPT, and that was great. Now, why did I say don't ask ChatGPT?
It would make it easy for you.
Well,
sometimes doesn't come out.
As long as you check it, it would make it easy for you.
Right, okay, as long as you check it. You're both right. Leslie, on this occasion, is more right than Michael, because I had already asked, the reason I said don't ask ChatGPT was because I had already asked ChatGPT this question, because I had the same question myself when I was preparing the Shir last week. Didn't let on last week that I already knew the answer from ChatGPT. That's why I told you not to look. Now, let me show you. This is really interesting. Let me show you what ChatGPT showed me. Right. I'm going to take you right to the top of this whole thing. Can you see the screen? I don't know if I think I took the screen off, didn't I?
Took it off,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it back on because it's really interesting. Okay, tell me when you've got it back on. Yeah, there you go.
Fine.
Right, so you can see in the top section here, this is what I asked it. Devarim chapter 17 says a Jewish king must write 2 Sifrei Torah. Does he have to write a whole Torah or only the bits pertaining to the king? That was my question to ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is full of compliments for the question. It always says something nice. If you want a compliment, ask ChatGPT something and it'll say, great question, right? Which is what it says. This touches on a classic sugya in Sanhedrin 21b. So far, so good, right? Michael Krauss has just immediately looked down to see what page we're on, and we are, in fact, on 21b. So at this point, I'm thinking, great, I'm going to find the answer to this question in the Gemarah. So at this point, I moved away from ChatGPT, and I thought, right, I'm going to find it myself. And I went down the entire page of 21b in Sanhedrin, looking very carefully for this question. And I couldn't find it. So I went back to ChatGPT and see what it said. So it goes on to say, the Torah in Devarim 17:18 says, and that's the pasuk that Jackie's just read for us, okay? It shall be when he sits upon the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a scroll from before the Kohanim, the Levites. Jackie just read us that pasuk, and I had it on the screen for you a minute ago. And then it goes on to say, Chazal understood this to mean that a Jewish king is obligated to have 2 Sifrei Torah written. One that goes out and comes in with him, carried everywhere, even to war or court, and one that remains in his treasury. So far, so good. And then comes this bit. Whole Torah or only the king's section? Gemarah Sanhedrin 21b, it is a whole Torah, not just the law of kingship. The Gemarah asks whether he writes just the section about kings, but answers explicitly, one might have thought he writes only the section of kingship. Therefore it says, Mishne Torah Hazot, he must write the whole Torah. And I said, I must have missed it. I mean, it's so confident in himself. He actually gives you the words that the Gemarah said. So off I trotted back to the Gemarah and I read the whole page again. And guess what? It's not there. It's completely made up, but it's made up with incredible confidence, right? Yeah. He's even quoted it. So I wasn't happy at this point. So I wrote this to it. I cannot find it in Sanhedrin where this question is asked. Please check. Right? And look what it answered. I checked. I could not find it in Sanhedrin 21b, any place where the Gemarah explicitly raises the question. So I was tempted to say, well, why did you bloody well quote it then? I didn't say that, but that was what I felt. Anyway, so he goes on and he says, here's a summary of what I did find. Okay, so he then actually starts to talk sense. And by this time, of course, I've read the whole of Sanhedrin 21b twice. So I know what it says. And now he starts to talk some sense about what it does talk. And we'll get to it because it's just like that further down in our page. Now, then it gives me some other ideas. He says, the idea that you remembered that someone suggests just the kingly section and then is rejected in favor of the whole Torah may be an extrapolation or conflation with other sources. And he quotes Rambam Hilchot Malachim. Okay, now, of course, by this stage, I don't trust him at all, right? So I'm going to look up Rambam Hilchot Malachim straight away. That was my next place I went to, and there it is. And actually, he's quoted correctly on this occasion. Look, this is Rambam, Maimonides, Hilchot Malachim and Milchamotehem, the laws of kings and their wars, chapter 3. During a king's reign, oh, you can read it, Jeffrey, on the screen for you.
During a king's reign, he must write a Torah scroll for himself in addition to the scroll which was left to him by his ancestors. A court of 71 elders shall check this scroll, by comparing it to the Torah scroll kept in the temple courtyard.
Okay,
If he's
stop
after-
there. Stop there. Because the next bit we're going to talk about a little bit later. So the Rambam there says a Torah scroll. It doesn't say just Parashat Malachim. Okay, so at this point, I've forgiven ChatGPT a little bit because he's quoted me correct. And then he says to me, if you want, I can try to locate if there is such a question in a later Midrash or Rishonim. Maybe that's what you encountered. Do you want me to search for that? So I said, yes, I want you to search for that because where you told me it was in 21b in Sanhedrin is not true. So yes, I said, yes, please. There you go. Right. And it thought, listen to this, it thought for 42 seconds. Now, in ChatGPT world, that's a long thought. Okay. Normally it comes up with it in milliseconds. So it thought for 42 seconds. And look what it says. You're right to push back. My earlier attribution to Sanhedrin 21b was off. You wonder, don't you? What, how does this happen? How does it think for itself and figure out that it's going to make something up because it can't find it? It's really scary. Anyway, it says it was off. The question, maybe only the kingly section, Parashat HaMelech, is not raised in the Bavli there. And then he finds a source that does spell it out. And it happens to be a favorite of David Marks's. It's the Sifrei. Okay, the Sifrei in Dvarim. And of course, I didn't trust it, did I? Because it might have just made that up. So I went to, it was very kind, and it gave me a link to go to Safaria to find the actual Sifrei. I'll tell you what the Sifrei is in a minute. And so I went to the link that it gave me, and there it is. Sifrei on Devarim 160. This time the ChatGPT is quoted absolutely right. Have a look over here. Jeffrey, on the screen for you, where my pointer is, Mishne.
Mishne, this tells me only of Mishne Torah, the repetition of the Torah, that is the book of Devarim. Whence do I derive that the mitzvah applies also to the rest of the Torah? From Ibid 19. Heed all the words of this Torah. If so, why is it written? The Mishnah of this Torah, because it, that is the script, is destined to change.
Okay, so he asks the question there, how do I know that it's not just Parashat Devarim and it's the whole Torah? So going back to ChatGPT, at this point, he's correct, and he's got the answer to the question that we asked. But you can see, can't you, how easy it is to be misled by ChatGPT, and I think it goes to the core of things here. And I just want to mention, this is a serious point I want to make for a moment, and that is two serious points, I think. Number one is that bad people say the following thing: if you're going to lie, lie with confidence, and you might well get away with it, and this is what it's done. ChatGPT is making us all into liars, because unless I had experience of being misled, if you were looking at ChatGPT for the first time or the second time, and you didn't know all the conversations we've had around this forum that you can get misled, you'd think it was in 21b in the Gemarah, and it's just not there. So that's number one. And number two, the second point I want to make, and this is a very serious point. We've discussed in the past how the rabbis or the Rosh Yeshivas in many yeshivas do not allow even art scroll translations or Steinsaltz Gemarahs. They just want their bocharim to have the original Vilna Shas, as it were, Rashi, Tosfos, and the classical commentators. And many years ago, I was very critical of that. And I said, it's not fair. you're making it elitist. You're making it so that, you know, people like me can't do it, because I couldn't do it back in the day without Art Scroll help or without Rav Steinsaltz's help. Back in the day, I used to use the original Hebrew Steinsaltz before the English came out. And it was great. It really was great. It made the Gemarah much, much easier to understand. But what they wanted to now, I'm beginning to understand this with the help of ChatGPT. I'm beginning to understand their approach a little more, in that they don't want you to rely on other people finding stuff for you, right? When I prepare this shiur, I use the Art Scroll Sanhedrin, and a lot of what I'm bringing for you is brought in the footnotes at the bottom. But I always go to the sources of those footnotes, because that's just the way I am. You know that I like to go to the original sources. But I can understand a little more now why the Rosh Yeshiva want their bochurim, when they're learning to learn, they don't want any shortcuts, because you can take shortcuts and actually what you're getting is somebody else's take on it, not your own necessarily. And so I think there is definitely a balance to be had here, which I think, with the benefit of a few more years of maturity, I'm talking probably 40 years more of maturity, I understand now the reasoning for that. And I just wanted to show you that little interaction I had with ChatGPT, because it just flabbergasted me that he could quote our Gemarah and just be so off. And secondly, just to make that point.
There was also another case, you know, there have been a few cases where lawyers have been quoting cases, and there was another one, I think, in the UK in the last week or so, where again the lawyer used ChatGPT. The judge said, "Where is it, please show me." And he said, "Oh, I was in a little bit of a hurry. I relied on ChatGPT, and it wasn't even there."
Yeah, I read about that too, and he was very, very heavily censured by the judge. In fact, so much so that I received, there's a particular company that I work with who write once a month. They write a newsletter for interesting stuff that's gone on in the medico-legal world. And actually, those things that you've just mentioned, Michael, were in their newsletter. They found it worthy enough to remind all their experts that because this is a newsletter, not just going out to me, of course, going out to all the people they work with, to remind them, don't rely on ChatGPT, you have to look things up. So it's an interesting thing. So to go back to our question, Jackie, it seems that the question was raised by the Sifrei. Now, I'm going to ask David to give us a little couple of minutes on the Sifra and the Sifrei, because I know it's a particular favorite of his, just to tell us the history of it, when it was written, and what it is, because we've just read a Sifrei on Devarim. David, tell us about the Sifra and the Sifrei, please.
Yeah, I can include the Mechilta in there as well.
Yeah, and the Mechilta as well, yeah.
At the same time. So the start at the end, the Sifrei, as I call it, is the halachic midrash to Sefer Bamidbar and Devarim. The Sifrei is the halachic midrash to Vayikra, and the Mechilta, the halachic midrash to the halachic parts of Sefer Shemot. These works were all written at the time of the Mishne. They are Mishnaic works, so they are probably one of the oldest commentaries that we have to the Torah. You'll find in them the names of all the scholars that we would find quite regularly in the Mishnah.
Good. Okay, perfect. So what you'll find is that, just one little thing to add to that, is that Rabbi Akiva was the main source of the Sifrei on Bamidbar and Dvarim. Rabbi Yishmael was particularly heavily influenced the Sifrei on Vayikra, and it just escapes me which of the Tanaim were most influential on the Mechilta. David, can you help me out? Just escapes me.
There are two Mechiltas. One is...
There's a Mechilta to Rabbi Yishmael, isn't there? There's a Mechilta to Rabbi Yishmael. So that would obviously be Rabbi Yishmael. Now, question. David correctly mentioned the Mechilta on Shmot, the Sifrei Vayikra, Sifrei on Bamidbar and Dvarim. Why is there none on Bereshit, please? Why is there not a Mechilta or Sifrei of this Tanaic books, which we rely on very heavily because they're so ancient? Why isn't there one on Bereshit?
There's very little or none in Bereshit at all, anyway.
None what?
No
laws
halachas there, or very few.
Yes, correct. Exactly. That is exactly the answer, because there aren't any halachas in Bereshit for there to be a mechilta on, because it's, as David said, it's the halachic midrash, as opposed to the agadic midrash, which is what we're more familiar with. When we say it's a midrash, what we normally mean, it's an agadic midrash, and then we come up with some phantasmagorical story. You know, the midrash says Moshe Rabbeinu was 10 amos high. That's an agadic midrash, right? What these books are halachic midrash, and there isn't one on Bereshit because there aren't any halachas. Correct. Very good.
So,
okay,
Jonathan,
yes.
There's one great halachas in Bereshit, of course, circumcision.
That is true. That is true. But there isn't a book, a halachic midrash on that particular halacha. You're quite right. There is a very important halacha in Bereshit of there's also Pru Revu, I guess.
With Miller, as you know, John, is a mile, that there's a discussion amongst the Rishonim as to whether the mitzvah is counted in Lech Lecha or in Tazria.
Yeah, so the in Tazria, where it says on the 8th day you shall circumcise, that was a commandment to the people, and the Rishonim discuss whether the mitzvah to Avraham Avinu counts as a mitzvah. Why wouldn't it count as a mitzvah? Because he was told that all of his descendants would have to do it, including Bnei Yishmael. Whereas when it gets to Tazria, where it says Isha ki Tazria, we're talking about a Jewish woman who has a child, who has to circumcise a child on the 8th day. So so if you look, for example, in Sefer HaChinuch, who lists all the mitzvah out, you'll find that the mitzvah there is of Milah is given in Tazria, not in Lech Lecha. But of course, you know, we always quote Lech Lecha because we even quote it, don't we, at the at a bris ceremony when we give the baby his name. We quote the psukim from Lech Lecha. The Vayomal Avraham es beno ben shmonas yamim, and Avram circumcised Yitzchak at 8 days. So yeah, very good, excellent, all great stuff. Yeah, yes, Jeffrey, you wanted to add something? You're muted, Jeffrey.
Can you hear me now or not?
Yes.
Still.
It says you're muted, but you're not.
He's on two machines.
I'm using.
Oh, you're on two machines, Jeffrey. Right.
Yeah,
we can hear you. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. So, first of all, about the king has to write two Sefer Torahs. Now, is that the king has to have two Sefer Torahs written by him personally, or he can pay a sofer to write the Sefer Torahs for him, and perhaps in the last sentence he would write it as we do today, because it takes a long time to write a Sefer Torah. It's not a 5-minute job. It's not a 2-week job. You know, I think it takes more than 6 months and probably nearer to 12 to do it properly. And kings have got other things to do besides writing Sephorim.
You're
But they've got
absolutely right, Jeffrey. You're absolutely right. And add into the mix that, what if he's got lousy handwriting, right?
Yeah.
What if he can't do it? I mean, you know, if I had to write a Sefer Torah, can you imagine what it would look like?
That was my fourth answer, Mark.
It was, yeah. You quoted the Rebbe.
Yeah.
And that's right. Jeffrey's right and Jackie's right. That's what we do today, don't we? If we want to take part in the writing of a Sefer Torah, we have a Sofer stam, and we put our hand on his hand as he writes a letter, and that is considered as if we've done it. I mean, you know, not everybody can do it. It takes a long time to learn how to be a sofer.
The king wouldn't have any practice anyway, so for him to write a whole Sefer Torah practice is impossible.
You're absolutely right. So Jeffrey is correct. The way it would have been done, and in fact, I think I read somewhere in one of the translations that we just read out that I think it might have been in the Rambam, that it was translated is the king has to have 2 Sifrei Torah written, right? Not that he has to write them, and it has to be that way, because otherwise, I mean, you know, I can't even read my own handwriting in English, never mind in Hebrew. Actually, funnily enough, my handwriting in Hebrew is better than in English because I do it slower. But I mean, you know, it's just impossible. Most of us could not write a Sefer Torah if our lives depended on it. So we get a Sofer stam to do it for us, in the same way as you appoint a Shaliach to do the Brit Milah for you, right? Whose mitzvah is it? Right, it's a father's mitzvah to do the Brit Milah, not the Moel. The Moel is only a shaliach, it's only an agent. And in fact, before you do the mitzvah, before the Moel does the bris, the Moel says to the father, I always have this stock line that I used to say, right? It's your mitzvah. You can either do it yourself, and I hand him the knife. I said, or you can appoint me as your agent. And he says, no, you do it for me, right? I said, last chance. Here's your chance. Here it is. You want to do it yourself? No. I don't want to do it myself. You do it for me, right? So it sort of breaks this tension a little bit at that point. But it's actually a halachic requirement. You know why it's a halachic requirement? I know we're digressing here. We're meant to be learning Gemarah, but this is quite interesting. It's a halachic requirement for the Moel to get the father to appoint him as a shaliach. Anybody know why it's a halachic requirement?
I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that my late son-in-law performed the bris on his first child. And I wish I'd known it. Well, I think I'm probably better that I didn't know in advance, but it was, I can understand why you need a shaliach.
Yeah. Okay. So just to go on that point, I have supervised non-Moelim doing their own children on 1 or 2 occasions only. Many Moelim do it. Many Moelim are happy to supervise a non-Moel. I was always very, very nervous, and I hated it. I only ever did it twice. One was an ophthalmic surgeon, and I reckon he probably knew what he was doing. And the other one was a pediatric surgeon who definitely did know what he was doing. So I was comfortable to allow them to do it under my guidance, as it were. But I understand your sentiment. Anybody know the answer to my question? Why you have to? It's a halachic requirement to appoint the Moel as a shaliach.
Because it's not the mitzvah for the shaliach; it's the mitzvah for the father.
Okay, that's absolutely correct. But why is it necessary to officially appoint him? Which is why I say to the guy beforehand, it's your mitzvah. You can officially appoint me as your shaliach now, or you can do it yourself.
Because you have to say a bracha. And the father
Yes.
can't say the bracha, the shaliach saying the bracha.
But he's doing it as a shaliach. You're right. Because the bracha, there's another bracha that the father does say. Shall I tell you the answer? It's a really interesting answer. There is and I don't know where it is. I've forgotten now, because this has only just come into my head, so I haven't looked it up. I've forgotten it now. I did know it once. There is a Gemarah that asks the question, what happens if a person steals the mitzvah of somebody else? Right? Somebody comes along and does a mitzvah that person was going to do without asking him, and now that person can't do that mitzvah. And this is a perfect example, because once that bris is done, you can't do it again, right? So let's say the father wanted to do it himself, and somebody came along on the morning of the 8th day before the father got to do the mitzvah and did the bris without his permission. What's the halacha? How is that father compensated? And there's a halacha that says what he has to do. And the compensation is the person who stole the mitzvah has to give him 10 gold coins. Asara zahavim, it's called. 10 gold coins. The exact value of them, don't know exactly in today's money, but it's a lot, right? So if you steal the mitzvah of somebody, and it's his mitzvah to do or her mitzvah to do, and somebody else comes along and does it without permission, you have to give 10 gold coins. So I used to say that sometimes as well. I used to say, right, if they didn't appoint me, sometimes I would say, right, do you want me to do it or you want to do it yourself? And most of the time they would say, no, you do it. So and I would say, right, you're appointing me your agent, right? And if they didn't say yes, if they were all like, a bit nervous and what have you, and they didn't actually physically do it, and I didn't want to go through the whole performance, I would say, as I'm getting the baby ready, I say, you have to, it's your mitzvah. And if I take it off you, I'd have to give you 10 gold coins, and I don't have 10 gold coins. So either you appoint me as your agent or you do it yourself. What's it to be? And eventually I get them to actually say the words, I appoint you as my agent. Now, it seems to the crowd there that I'm just sort of, going through a process, but I'm doing it deliberately because that's the halacha. That's what you've got to do. You've got to appoint the shaliach. So there you are. I've let you into a few of the secrets of the trade there. How did we get onto that, please? Anybody, any idea how we got to that?
Oh, that was from Jack.
Oh, writing the Sefer Torah.
Sorry, I asked the question now.
Yeah,
No.
writing the Sefer Torah. Yes, Jeff.
No, it was on Michael's comment. Why is there no halachic midrash to breach it?
Yeah, and then we got on to Brit Milah, and then Jeffrey said, well, what about writing the Sefer Torah? We have to appoint somebody else to do it for him because he doesn't know how to do it. Same with the Brit Milah. Yes, Jeffrey.
There was one other point about a Brit Milah. Moshe did not Brit his children. His wife did it. Now, it's written in the Torah, and Moshe, probably at the time that his children were born, wasn't given the Torah. So that was an error on his part, wasn't it?
It was an error on his part because in the Psukim say so.
Yeah, and really, Brit didn't just come because of the Torah; it came because of Abraham, and so he would have known about it, but he neglected to do it, and it was his wife who was a ger who did it.
Correct on all points. Correct on all points.
She was a righteous lady in her own right.
Correct on all points. And the Torah she says to him, Chatan Damim. She calls her, you are a Chatan Damim. You're a bridegroom of blood. In other words, I had to do this because you didn't do it. And, the child was going to die if this wasn't done. So the question arises, why didn't he do it? And the answer given is, well, the Torah wasn't given yet, and maybe the circumstances weren't appropriate. There wasn't anybody to do it. There's all sorts of excuses given, but there's no question that it is a criticism. By the way, that story has halachic implications as well. What halachic implication might that story have?
Does a woman can perform a Brit?
Correct. Can a woman perform a Brit? Can you have a mohelet? Answer?
Yes.
But
I would say
very good.
I would say it's inappropriate in the generally, because the man would get the preference. But if there's no man to do it, I see no reason why the woman should not be able to.
Wow, that's brilliant. Between the three of you, that's absolutely spot on. Michael Krauss says yes. Julia said yes, but, and Jeffrey expanded. Correct. It should be a man. Why should it be a man, by the way, halachically? Why should it be a man if possible? Apart from sexism, forget sexism. Why should it be a man?
Abraham was told to circumcise his son.
Okay, that's good. Abraham was told to circumcise his son, right? There is a halachic concept of, let me ask you this question. Can somebody who is deaf, stone deaf, can somebody who is stone deaf blow the shofar?
presumably not, because he can't
for the
hear
community.
it.
Correct. Presumably not, because I wouldn't have asked you the question otherwise.
I would say you can.
No, you need to be able to hear it.
Okay, so why does he need to be able to hear it, Julia?
Because he knows that he's performing the mitzvah.
So there is a concept.
No, the mitzvah is hearing the shofar. So
okay, let me ask. Okay, so he can't do that mitzvah because he can't hear it, right? Now then, what about a child under bar mitzvah? A child under bar mitzvah who has learnt to blow the shofar, can he blow the shofar for the community? The mitzvah is to hear the shofar. I'm in the community and I hear this boy. What's the answer?
No.
Yeah.
No, he can't. Why not?
I would say that he can if there is nobody else capable of doing it. If he's the only one in the community that was capable of doing it properly, he can do it rather than it be done improperly.
Okay, let me ask you a question then, Jeffrey. This is a halachic question. You have to pretend you're a dayan now. Right? If a boy under bar mitzvah blows the shofar, has the community fulfilled its obligation to hear the shofar? Does it have any halachic value? Julia's shaking her head.
No, because the
nobody else
you're leading us there. You're leading us to the point that it must be an adult man who is post bar mitzvah. And if anybody hears, well, that's the
Jonathan,
question, isn't it?
Because
there must be something in the Torah which tells us that the mitzvah can only be that it's performed by an adult male. But where it is, I don't know.
Jackie, go on, Jackie.
Right. I would say because if he has to say the brachas before blowing the shofar and he's not bar mitzvah, they have no validity. Because if a boy under bar mitzvah gets called to read the Haftarah, he can't say the brachas, but he can read the Haftarah.
He can't, that's not quite accurate, but I know exactly what you mean. He can't read the Torah and he can't say the brachas for the Torah. He can for the Haftarah, not the Torah. And under bar mitzvah can say a Haftarah with the brachas, but not read from the Torah. So you're right on that. And the whole reason for all of those things is the halachic principle that only somebody who is what is known in halacha as a bar chiyuva, meaning somebody who has the obligation to do that mitzvah, only he or she can perform the mitzvah for somebody else, right? So an under bar mitzvah has no obligation in the mitzvah. Of course, we bring him to shul to listen to the shofar and we make sure he does, but that's only from a point of view of what we call chinuch, of education, so that when he turns bar mitzvah, he knows what it's all about, right? He's no obligation to do any mitzvot whilst he's under bar mitzvah. So if he's no obligation, he cannot fulfill the obligation for somebody else. Okay, so he's not a bar chiyuva. Now, that is why the big question about a woman doing a bris is such a hot potato, because according to that halachic principle, Tzipporah should not have been able to do the brit of the child because she's not a bar chiyuva, she's not a woman. I mean, she's not a man. So she doesn't have to have a Brit Milah. Okay? So so that's why, however, the halacha is correct. As you all said it, the halacha is correct. Preferable for a man because he's a bar chiyuva. But in a situation where there is no man to do it, the woman can do it. Why? Because actually there is there's two prongs to this mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of the father to do the brit. What if there is no father? And there is a mitzvah for the child to be circumcised. Are you with me? There's two angles to this. So the first angle, the father doing the mitzvah, is really only so that the boy should be circumcised, right? So that's why it's allowed that even though she's not herself needs to be circumcised, she facilitates this in a situation where there's no man to do it. But it's an interesting halachic discussion. And what it's brought out is that we all now understand why it is that only somebody over bar mitzvah can read the Torah, because he has no obligation to listen to it. Whereas the Haftarah is a later addition for which there is no real obligation to listen to. And therefore, an under bar mitzvah can do it. I remember my first reading of a Haftarah in shul. I was under bar mitzvah. I was 10. I even remember which parsha it was. It was Parshat Yitro. And every year the shul used to take over. The youth of the shul used to take over for 1 week and have the youth service. And I was 10 years old. So I couldn't do anything else. I wanted to join in. The only thing I was allowed to do was the Haftarah, because I couldn't daven for the Omid, and I couldn't lane because I wasn't over bar mitzvah. But you can say Haftarah. By the way, that you should not have your under bar mitzvah making kiddush on a Friday night. Shabbat morning, there's a bit more leniency because kiddush on a Shabbat morning is not halachically as strong. It's not a deoraisa the way Friday night. So Friday night, if you have a under bar mitzvah, he should not say kiddush for the rest of the family, and over bar mitzvah should do it for the same reason. He's not a bar chiyuva. Anyway, that was very interesting. So all of that came because of Jackie's question. So,
sorry.
There you go. Yes, Jeffrey.
Sorry to digress, but it's about Friday night in Kiddush. If there's no male in the household, or when I say above bar mitzvah, and if does the female make, if there's a widow living alone and she hasn't got a man to say Kiddush for her, does she say Kiddush? I think she does.
You're right, she does. Yes. Yes. For all the reasons that we've said.
So in the pecking
Excellent.
order, if there was a woman and a pre-bar mitzvah boy, it would be the woman that does it, not the pre-bar mitzvah boy.
Correct. Correct. The question arises, this is a further question. What if you've got a woman? Let's take a situation, right? Let's take a situation which is not beyond the realms of possibility at all. A woman who was brought up in a religious home, who knows, educated, has heard Kiddush, knows Kiddush perfectly well, finds herself in a situation, let's say married to a Jewish man who knows diddly squat, right? He's not been brought up Jewish, never heard of Kiddush, right? Don't know anything, right? Certainly couldn't read the Hebrew or even nothing. The question then arises, can the woman make Kiddush and the man says Amen and has fulfilled his obligation of Kiddush? That's a good question, isn't it? Can the woman make the Kiddush for the man? In a situation where the man can't do it for himself. We're all agreed that if the man can do it for himself, the man should do it. But what about in the situation where the woman is the only person there, but there are men or a man who needs to have Kiddush said because he's Jewish, but he doesn't know how to do it?
Does Kiddush need to be in Ivrit? Does it need to be in Hebrew? Can Kiddush not be said in English?
Good question. Can you be Yotze Kiddush by saying it in English? I'm tempted to say, without looking it up, that the answer would be, the real answer would be yes. But the answer that you would get would be no, because of reform. Right? Because of this, equal and opposite reaction to reform that we talked about on occasions, and because they do stuff in English, there is a sort of a natural aversion to doing it. I'm going to look that up. That's a piece of homework for me, to look up whether you can actually be Yotze Kiddush in English. I think I'm going to put my neck out here and guess. I'm going to look it up to confirm, and I'll tell you next week. But I'm going to guess and say, yes, I think halachically you can be Yotze in English if you have no other alternative. Then you're going to give me another question. What's better, a woman doing it in Hebrew or a man doing it in English? We are never going to get any Gemarah done, are we? Here, that's another great question.
And I'll be very interested to hear your response next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, I think we might be a little busy next Wednesday and the Wednesday afterwards, actually. Yeah. Next Wednesday is Rosh Hashanah. The Wednesday after that is Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, if it's not Yom Kippur, I think. Yeah, it's Erev Yom Kippur, so I'm not sure that we'll be learning Erev Yom Kippur. Might be a little bit busy. But whenever it is the next time we learn, because I will be listening to this recording just before I prepare for next year, whenever that will be. But Ezrat Hashem, we'll go through these questions. Let me just list them for my own benefit. Can you make Kiddush in English if you don't know any Hebrew? Can a woman be Yotze for a man if she knows it and he doesn't? And what's preferable, a woman in Hebrew or a man in English? Okay, those are my homework for next week. Yes, Jeffrey.
So going back to the king writing the Sefer Torah and him not doing it, but having a sofer doing it for him, the king would obviously pay the sofer. So it would be a parnasa for the sofer. And I'm minded of Sir Moses Montefiore, who was a savior to Jewish communities in distress all over the diaspora. And he employed soferim, you know this anyway, without me telling you, to do Megillot and also to do Sifrei Torah. And he sponsored that. He came out of his coffers. He paid for it. It was as though he was a king. He was employing people, having them educated and passing down their skills for the benefit of the community.
Correct. It was all of that is correct. And the reason that Jeffrey says that I know that is because there is a Megillah in our family, actually Jeffrey's family, not really my family, to be honest. It's on Jeffrey's father's side, which belonged to the shul of Sir Moses Montefiore in Ramsgate. Jeffrey's father, who was my Uncle Harold. I could never get my head around this when I was a little boy, by the way. Uncle Harold had an Uncle Harold. And I just couldn't, it was too much for me to understand that at the time. But Uncle Harold's Uncle Harold, I think it was his father, wasn't it, Jeffrey, who was the Shamus in Ramsgate?
No, it was it was a cousin of his mother's. It was his mother's first cousin. He
Right,
was
somebody in the family anyway.
He was married to his father's sister, and he
Right.
was the shamus to Sir Moses Montefiore. And he was his shochet. He went everywhere with him. He was his Batman.
So when the community dispersed in Ramsgate, one of the things that came into the family was a Megillah, which Jeffrey has very kindly given to me on long-term loan, since I can read it and he can't. So I lend that Megillah out of that Megillah every year, and it's very, very precious to me. We don't actually have official provenance for it, but we know that that's where it came from. It came from the shul of Sir Moses Montefiore. But actually, it doesn't fall into the category of the wonderful things that Sir Moses did and have things written, because my son Dan sent this Megillah, or photographs of it. I don't think he actually sent the Megillah, but sent photographs of this Megillah to an expert in London, a guy called Rabbi Benarosh. Can't remember his first name. An expert on ancient Sfarim, Sephardi guy called Rabbi Benarosh in London. And Rabbi Benarosh dated this Megillah to about 100 years before Sir Moses Montefiore. It's about 350 years old, this Megillah. So whilst it belonged to the Montefiore shul, it wasn't one of those that he had written, because it predates that. It's 100 years older than that. So it's a very, very precious Megillah, and a very old Megillah, and it's a very beautiful Megillah. And it's sitting downstairs in my cupboard next to my spare tefillin. Yes, Jeffrey?
I was going to say it could have been used as the Torah in the courtyard for the Sepharim to copy.
Yes, absolutely. It could absolutely have been. Yes. There's no doubt. There's a beautiful song of one of the modern American songwriters that was written, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, don't remember. But my kids used to play it when they were little. And it's a story of a Sefer Torah speaking. It's a beautiful song. And this Sefer Torah speaks about its life. You know, and it's basically this. So if this Sefer Torah could speak, it would tell you where it had been, and it had been in a shul in this magnificent Oren Kodesh, and then it got ripped apart by the Nazis and was hidden somewhere, and eventually made its way back to somewhere. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. I'll see if I can find it and put it on the group. But you know, if this Megillah could speak, Jeffrey, it would be a fascinating story. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. We should at least open the Gemarah, since this is a Gemarah shir. Let me put the Gemarah on the screen at least for a couple of minutes, and we're actually still in the Mishnah, and I want to show you something else as well from the Mishnah. So what we have spoken about so far, this Mishnah, Lo yarbe lo susim, you shouldn't have a lot of horses, ela kadei merkavto, only enough for his cavalry, kesev azav lo yarbe lo ma'od, he shouldn't get too much money, ela kadei litain aspania, remember we spoke about this word, which really should probably be afsania, and the Greek, this was what we did last week, the Greek word meaning a salary for soldiers, and then that's where we got to last time. V'kotev lo sefer Torah lishmo, and he should write lo. What does lo mean?
To him.
For himself, for him or to him. He should write for himself sefer Torah lishmo. What does lishmo mean? Literally,
his name. For his name.
For his name. And if we were to say that you do a mitzvah lishma or shelo lishma, what do we mean, Leslie? Ever heard that expression?
Yeah, we do it for ourselves and not for ourselves.
Yeah, you do it for the sake of the mitzvah, or you do it for an ulterior motive. So if you give tzedakah and you do it quietly and nobody knows about it, then there's no question that you do that mitzvah lishma. It's called lishma, for its own sake. You do it for the sake of the mitzvah. However, if you give the same tzedakah and you insist on having as a condition for that tzedakah, you insist on having your names plastered all over the place so that everybody sees what a big, generous person you are, it could be said that you have not done that mitzvah lishma, and it's called shelo lishma, not for its own sake. And so what this is saying is, this Mishne is telling us that this Sefer Torah has to be written not lishmo, for the name of the king, because that's lo already. He's written it for himself. The Sefer Torah has to be written lishmo, for the sake of the Sefer Torah. In other words, it's writing a Sefer Torah for writing a Sefer Torah's sake. Why do we say that? Because he's already got one. The Gemarah is going to debate about this because he's already got a Sefer Torah. Where's he got a Sefer Torah from?
In the temple.
For his predecessor.
From his predecessor. The one in the temple belongs to everybody, Michael. You're right about that. But what Jackie's right. From his father, right? His father was the king, and his father wrote a Sefer Torah. And what happens to that Sefer Torah when the father passes on? It goes to the son. So he's already got one. So this is telling us he has to write one apart from the one that he already had. And we'll see that in the Gemarah.
He should have two, because if his father was the king should have had two Sifrei Torah.
Right, so there should be, in other words, there should be hundreds of them, right? Right, some of them get lost on the way, Jackie.
Okay.
Right? Or they get worn out and they go to the Gemarah. But yeah, it's a fair point.
And you can see the benefit of it, can't you? Because it's like when you do revision notes. If you write it yourself, it goes into your memory. Your mind retains it. If you don't write it yourself and you just read it, then it's more superficial, and you can see why there is the requirement and the mitzvah to write it yourself. And actually, that is a little bit why having a scribe to do it takes away from that benefit, doesn't it?
It does. You're right. I agree with that. And halavai, we could all write a Sefer Torah. You know who's writing a Sefer Torah in our community right now?
Yeah, David, isn't he?
David Bernstein.
Is he really?
David Bernstein is writing a Sefer Torah. It's the most wonderful thing to be able to do. And you're absolutely right. I mean, reading it is one thing. And if you read it often enough, like David Marks has done over, how many years, David, have you been about Korah?
Too many.
Too many. No, not too many. Me'ava Esrim, more and more and more, David. You should be zocher to do it for many, many years. If you do it as often and as long as David has done it, that is why he's got these psukim at his fingertips. He didn't even have to think about it because it's there. Not anymore. Well, that's right, because you're not reading it often enough, David.
Mm.
Maybe
No,
we should get you back
it's age and memory catching up.
But the point is, the more you'd read it, the more you know it. And of course, you're right, Julia. And if you write it yourself, of course, you know it more. Writing notes yourself is much better than reading them in a book. You're quite right. And it does detract from it. And what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, which is, write one letter yourself, is very much b'di'avad, because we can't do it ourselves. If we were able to do it ourselves, then it's obviously the greatest mitzvah. And David writing this Sefer Torah is fabulous. Can't wait till he's finished it and we have a Hachnasat Sefer Torah that he has actually written for himself. That would be absolutely amazing. Now, the last bit, I know we're out of time, but the last bit I want to do is just the next few words. So at least we have done some Gemarah, because this is a nice piece of Gemarah, this. So what does he do with this Sefer Torah that he's written? Many of you have alluded to it already. Mishne tells us, Yotzei la milchama, when he goes out to war, motzi'ah ima, he takes it out with him. When he goes to war, he takes it out with him. Hu machnisa nichnas, when he comes back from war. Hu machnisa imo, he brings it back with him. So this Sefer Torah goes out to war with the king and comes back in to war with the king. Have a look.
I have a problem with the language, Johnny, with the grammar.
Yes, so do I. Let's go back. Sorry, let me put that back on. I know what you're going to say. Go on.
Ima and Imo makes sense in both. I don't understand Ima.
Ima
yes. Would be with her.
Yes, Ima is feminine. Now I wonder, David. I thought the same thing, but I only just noticed it as I was saying it just now. So this thought now is just off the top of my head, and I wonder whether it's this: Yotzeh la milchama. He goes out to war. Motziah, he brings it. Ima, with the war. Milchama is feminine. So maybe the Ima there is referring to the war. I can't think of another answer off the top of my head. What do you think, David?
No, because when he returns from war, it's still in the
It's with him, yeah. It's with him because there's no war anymore. So he brings it with him. The war's finished. That's the only thing I can think of right now. Okay, another piece of homework. That's your homework, David. Your homework for next time is to sort. You're going to ask questions. You're going to have to find the answers. That's the rule here. You probably realise that now. It's a very good question. That's my stab at an answer. But I want to show you this before we go. I want to show you this. You've seen it before, but I want to show it you. Remember that photograph? I've shown you this photograph before.
Yeah.
That is the Anzac Torah. That is the Sefer Torah. And do you know where this is taken, this photograph?
India.
Australia.
It's taken in Gallipoli. In Gallipoli. These are the Australian and New Zealand Armed Corps, known as Anzac. Anzac. And this is known as the Anzac Torah. This, as you can see, was an article in the Jerusalem Post, which was written by a chap called Jonathan Lieberman on May the 4th, 2024. And I wrote an article about the Anzac Torah. Let me tell you this story very briefly. This chap here is a man called Rabbi David Yitzchak Friedman. He was the rabbi, the chaplain to the Australian forces. He was the rabbi of the Perth Hebrew congregation in the beginning of the 20th century. And of course, my connection there is that my son is the current rabbi of the Perth Hebrew congregation and is the current chaplain to the Australian armed forces. He is Rabbi David Yitzchak Friedman's one of his successors. This man, Rabbi David Yitzchak Friedman, went out to war in the First World War in the Battle of Gallipoli, a very famous battle where the Australian and New Zealand army suffered tremendous losses and fought like lions. On their way, they stopped in Alexandria in Egypt, and the Jewish community in Alexandria gave this Sefer Torah to Rabbi Friedman and his troops to take with him to battle. And this Sefer Torah went out to battle in Gallipoli and came back again after Gallipoli. It got lost, and then it was found again in the late 1950s, I think. Or no, maybe it got lost in the 50s and was found in the 90s. And it now resides in the Aron Kodesh of the newly refurbished Perth Hebrew congregation in a place of honor right in the middle of the Aron Kodesh in a beautiful glass case. And once a year on Anzac Day, which is why I wrote this article, it's in April. Actually, you could see the beginning of the article says last week, April 25th, marked Anzac Day. And I think I don't know if the photograph is on here. I put a photograph of it in the New Aron Kodesh as well. I don't think it's on the article, no. But that's every year it comes out, and we have we have the ceremony at the cenotaph on Armistice Day, right? Well, they have a ceremony in Australia. They have a ceremony on Anzac Day, and every year on Anzac Day, the rabbi takes the Anzac Sefer Torah and parades that Anzac Sefer Torah at their equivalent of the cenotaph ceremony, and it's a very emotional thing. So that Rabbi Friedman was doing exactly what our Mishne said. He took the Sefer Torah out to battle. And again, I don't want to keep you out too long, but have a look at this one. This is a famous one. You'll have seen this one before.
Yeah.
How about this photograph?
Yeah. Rabbi Goren. Yeah.
Rabbi Goren in 1967. What's he holding in his arms?
Shofar.
Yeah.
A Sefer Torah. No, he's not holding a shofar. That's a different picture you're thinking, Jackie.
Oh.
The one that you're thinking of, he has a Sefer Torah and a shofar. This is a different picture. He's passed the shofar on to this soldier next to him, but he's holding his Sefer Torah. He went out to war with his Sefer Torah. Now, some of you will know that I was discussing with Ora, my Nigerian friend, who you might have read about and seen if you were at Danny Limore's lecture the other night. She was there. We were discussing all sorts of things that we do today in modern Israel, which are based on ancient Israel. And taking a Sefer Torah to war is one of them, because the IDF have a Sefer Torah on every base, right? Even the Chiloni bases, they have a Sefer Torah. Some people, some tank drivers, my son, when he was in Yehuda, when he was in a tank, they had a Sefer Torah with him in the tank, right? They take Sifrei Torah out to battle. And that comes from our Gemarah. And I think that's an appropriate place to stop. We're 10 minutes over time. I'm sorry to have kept you all, but it was all very interesting and largely irrelevant to the Gemarah, but nevertheless fascinating. Okay, homework. David's going to find out the grammatical correct bit of our Mishnah, and I'm going to find those halachic conundrums about who can make Kiddush for whom. Anybody else want some homework?
Neither of us are going to use ChatGPT.
No, we're not going to ask ChatGPT.
Johnny,
because we're going to get stuck if we do that.
How does Steinsaltz point Yotzei Lemilchama Motziah Ima?
Ima with a mapik hey and a mapik mem, a dagish mem.
And how does he translate it?
With him, which is incorrect.
Same as Art Scroll.
Art Scroll also says with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not correct. Not correct. Okay. You've got homework there, David. You've got homework.
Don't know if I find an answer.
Well, don't be so negative. Of course you will. Yes. Who wanted to say something? Julia, I think.
Well, it's not really related to this, but I've signed up to read Mishnah, Perek, the first Perek of Sanhedrin. And I was wondering, because I've never done this before, but it's in memory of a dear friend who died last week, whether I should do it in partnership with somebody. Is that a good way of doing it, or I just read it myself?
It's a great way to do it. A great way to do it, because that way both of you get to learn and you learn from one another. That's the whole concept of the way learning is done from time immemorial. That it was done in pairs. Yeah, Rabbi Hillel and Shammai, Rav and Shmuel. Okay, Shag V'Talia. That's how you do it. You bounce ideas off one another, and that's why this forum is so enjoyable for me, because I'm not just teaching Gemarah here. Well, in fact, I'm not teaching Gemarah at all, am I? We don't really do much of that at all. But what we do is we get everybody else's opinions, and it's brilliant. I'll tell you, I'll let you into a little secret. This morning, been really busy today. I've got a ton on, and I went out for my morning walk with Elisheva, and I said, you know what? I could really do with cancelling the Gemarah share this morning. I've got too much to do. And then I thought, no, I don't want to do that, because I enjoy it so much. I don't want to do that. And I can't tell you over the years how many Gemarah shiurs I've cancelled or not gone to, because the truth was I didn't really enjoy it, because there wasn't that sort of back and forth that we've got here and you do with the Chevrusah. So I would utterly recommend to you do it together.
I'll put something on the group if anybody wants to do it with me, but I will be starting soon. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent. Very good. Right. Let me wish you all a Ktiva v'chatima tova and a Shana tova u'mutuka. We will meet again, as they say. Who knows when?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Tack så mycket.
Thank you for answering the
Thank you,
questions.
Johnny.
Thank you, Johnny.
Bye, everyone.